1 review down, 7 to go. Let's keep Pokémonth going with the first of the Sinnoh movies, The Rise of Darkrai. For their 4th-gen debut, Ash, Brock, and new companion Dawn arrive in Alamos Town, where strange happenings are afoot. As a mysterious fog settles over the city, people and Pokemon alike are plagued by nightmares, and all the while, distortions in time and space are occurring. Is this all the work of the sinister Darkrai, or are there greater forces at play than our heroes could have ever imagined? Rise of Darkrai was one of the movies I was most looking forward to when I sat down to work on this series. Part of what makes Pokémonth fun for me is watching how the movies hop across different genres, from science fiction to dark fantasy to spy flick and so forth. And the prospect of seeing Pokemon's first attempt at horror was exciting to me. And when the last Pokémonth ended, this is the movie that everybody wanted me to review. There was a lot of hype surrounding this one, and now having seen it, I can say that I really like what it tries to be. I mean, it's a horror movie with Pokémon. That's pretty cool. While previous movies had incorporated horror elements, this one goes all out, taking whatever bits of Frankenstein the first movie had left behind and combining them with ideas that can almost be described as Lovecraftian. A town overrun with the phantoms of Pokémon trapped in a restless sleep, fog that renders the town inescapable, a cross-dimensional clash of titans whose fury can only be quelled by a song some guy heard in a dream almost 100 years ago. This premise has so much potential, and they just waste it. Okay, they don't waste it, but still, I can't shake this feeling that this movie isn't everything that it could have been. Pokémon 3 came out 8 years before this one. It had been a good long while since the series got dark, and I'm not saying that dark means good, but still, this was a good time for the series to show some teeth again. And the premise was already there, but they pull so many punches. There are some genuinely unsettling moments with great atmosphere, but opportunities for character growth or tension are often squandered. For example, we have a love triangle between one-shot expositing sidekicks Alice, Tonio, and Baron Alberto. Alberto has the hots for Alice despite Alice's expressed disinterest in him.
Excuse me, but I thought I told you no already.
Yeah, he's basically Gaston. It's not an incredibly compelling subplot, but it could have been spread out to give the audience more investment in the one-shot characters. Instead, it's introduced and resolved in, like, 12 seconds.
You see, Tonio's the one I like.
Oh, now I'm interested. I can't wait to see your situation literally not change at all over the next 90 minutes.
Though they do have an interesting relationship with the location. The town's giant landmark was built by Tonio's great-grandfather, and the song it plays at the end to save the day was a song Alice learned from her grandmother. There's a sense that Alice and Tonio's part in the story is a legacy they inherited from their ancestors. And Alberto makes for some very effective comic relief when he's inexplicably transformed into a Licky-Licky. I don't know why, but this is hilarious to me. Maybe it's just because such a dignified voice is coming out of such a doofy-looking Pokemon.
Excuse me, people, but you don't even know the meaning of the word problem.
Since when can Licky-Licky talk?
They get some good use out of the one-shot characters, which is a lot more than can be said about some of the other movies, but I still feel like they could have done more. Instead, the main emotional through line revolves around Darkrai, who's another big missed opportunity. The pitch-black Pokemon who lurks in the shadows and gives his victims horrible nightmares. When the first signs appear that something might be off, Alberto is quick to blame Darkrai and leads the whole town in a witch hunt against him. Again, he's basically Gaston. But there's no real build-up to Darkrai's first appearance. Other movies would leave a character like this shrouded in mystery, allowing the audience's imagination to put the men on ease before the big reveal. Here, he's mentioned, then he shows up. In broad daylight. Not scary. And I think that...
Oh, right, I'm not gonna worry about spoilers this time around, so viewer beware if that matters to you.
Darkrai is a red herring, which I think is why they pulled back on the scariness. They didn't want him to be too sinister, and granted, he's already pretty creepy. He doesn't carry on conversations, he just kinda stares at you and growls. He's a spooky dude, and the movie takes advantage of that by making Darkrai a social outcast rather than just a monster. Other Pokemon think he's scary, so they attack. He defends himself and gives them nightmares as a result. That's not his intention, it's just sort of what he does. And the resulting vicious cycle makes him one of the more compelling characters in the series. It teaches kids to look beyond appearances, which is always a good lesson to learn. But it seems like too much focus was put on the truth behind the facade and not enough on the facade itself. I mentioned before that this movie is Frankenstein, but it's also Beauty and the Beast. Again, it has a Gaston. So give the beast time to be a beast. We saw Mewtwo kill a room full of scientists, and we still sympathized with him. We saw Entei stomp Charizard's neck with expressed intent to kill him, we still sympathized with him. The worst we see Darkrai do is give Ash a bad dream. And he's not a malicious figure, that's the point. He's the hero of the movie. And right from the start, they want you to know that he's not a bad guy, despite what everybody may say.
Wait. Remember, it was Baron Alberto who attacked first.
But that's just it. The turn isn't as effective when the audience isn't given the chance to make the same mistake. And so much more of the runtime could have been dedicated to making him more ominous, instead of the typical padding that we get in so many of these movies. And I still don't get how they found time for padding. There are so many subplots in this one that you think there wouldn't have been any room left for the Pokemon being cute scene. It all comes down to very inefficient storytelling. There's very little cause and effect, which can make or break a story. There's a great lecture by the creators of South Park in which they explain that every plot point should be linked by either a but or a therefore. Scientists create the world's most powerful Pokemon, but he refuses to be their puppet. Therefore, he creates a scenario to prove how powerful he is, but the ensuing battle is super violent, therefore Ash sacrifices himself, therefore Mewtwo sees the error of his ways. If any plot points are connected by and then, you have a problem. Ash and the gang go to a garden, and then their Pokemon start fighting, but Alice knows a song to calm them down. And then some guy mentions a thing called Darkrai, and then Darkrai shows up, and then they go to some tower, and then they have a Pokemon battle for no reason, and then Darkrai shows up again. It doesn't flow. And it doesn't matter how well these bits of information come together at the end when they're delivered this clunkily. This isn't a new problem for the series, but this is the first Pokemon movie I find myself trying to rewrite. That's how much I like this premise. I want to see it explored in a more interesting way than a bunch of jumbled exposition followed by battle. And what about that battle? An entire town abducted to a pocket dimension to become the venue for the final showdown between Palkia, Master of Space, and Dialga, Master of Time. It's about as interesting as the Rayquaza-Deoxys fight, which is to say, not very. The buildup is great. There's a very effective device where Tonio keeps reading an entry in his great-grandfather's journal about a dream he had.
Two entities that never should have met. Cross paths in the space-time rift. This ill-fated meeting has brought forth their unbridled wrath, enveloping the city.
There's something inherently unsettling about reading the darker chapters of someone's journal, which is great for the tone. It's vague enough to keep the characters guessing, but gives enough information to create some tension. The audience will wonder when the story we're hearing about will overlap with the story we're watching now. And when the stories finally converge, it's an awesome moment. We learn that Darkrai has been aware of it this whole time, and when Palkia and Dialga's battle threatens Alamos Town, he is ready to throw down. But it's too long and too far removed from the human characters. Whatever danger there may be is diluted when we see the exact same thing over and over again. Palkia shoots a thing, Dialga shoots a thing, Darkrai gets blasted through a building, rinse, repeat, be bored. Though one thing it does better than Destiny Deoxys is provide some actual stakes. Because of wibbledy-wobbledy, spacey-wacy, hand-wavium nonsense, the pocket dimension the town is in starts to collapse in on itself. The longer Palkia and Dialga fight, the smaller it gets. Except those stakes don't come back around to affect the battle, and the people they do affect are too far removed from the battle. It adds an interesting element, but doesn't incorporate it as well as, say, the Entei Charizard fight. I know, I keep coming back to Pokemon 3. That's because I think it does a lot of things better than the other movies.
In case it wasn't obvious.
This isn't just some random battle with cruel monsters and explosions, it's the crowning moment of a conflict that's been mounting for an hour. Two characters seeking mutually exclusive ends. Ash confronting a force powerful enough to defeat two gym leaders, all in an environment that's constantly shifting in Entei's favor. Character, motivation, world, all wrapped up in this fast-paced, beautifully animated sequence. The simple fact that Ash is on Charizard's back the whole time only ups the tension that much more. Way more than this.
Perfect! Great! Careful!
Oh my gosh, do something! The pace never picks up in the Palkia-Dialga fight, and unless Tonio were there telling us how bad things were getting,
if those two collide once more, then it's over for all of us.
We would have no way of knowing if the conflict was escalating. Without that momentum, the heavier moments don't pack the same weight. In the end, knowing that Entei could have killed Charizard but didn't, packs way more of a punch than actually seeing Darkrai die.
Oh, yeah, Darkrai dies.
But don't worry, he gets resurrected at the end, because death only matters in Pokemon Heroes. And there's even a montage, you know, in case you weren't paying attention the first time. I'm not saying Rise of Darkrai is devoid of value. There's some good atmosphere here, the comic relief works, and I understand why so many fans latched onto this one. On paper, there's a lot of great stuff here, especially Darkrai as a character, but it doesn't have quite the right connective tissue to bring all the ideas together. If this is your favorite movie in the series, I get it. There's a lot I like about it, and it sets a really high benchmark for the rest of the Sinnoh movies, but I can't think of many other Pokemon movies that frustrate me this much, and it's the first one I like more for what it could have been than what it actually is. Would this shadow extend over the rest of the Sinnoh movies? We'll find out with Giratina and the Sky Warrior, next time on Pokemon! Special thanks to my good friend Zach Hurst for donating this DVD. The greatest man I've ever known and the greatest lover the world has ever seen. He, asked me to say that. He also asked me to tell you to check out his YouTube channel and geekvision.tv for more high-quality, nerd-based content like this. And now, ladies and gentlemen, from the upcoming Darkrai the Musical, I present the Ballad of Baron Alberto! No one quips like Alberto, does tricks like Alberto.